Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist podcast. We have Verni Howard, Executive Director of the Providence House, here with us. How are you, Verni?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Good, glad you're here.
I love being here. Thank you.
I've loved chatting with you before this. And so, just for the people who weren't here for this pre-conversation, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you're at, and just the journey that God brought you through to be at the Providence House?
Sure. I am always in awe of God. So let me just start there. I am in awe of how He moves us along the journey to get us to our purpose. And so I am a banker, was a banker for almost 20 years. And I stumbled into that role. I was a science major,
Oh, wow.
interviewed at a bank because I was practicing my interviewing skills. And the bank said, "Hey, can we fly you out to Atlanta for a second interview?" And all I really heard was free trip to Atlanta, right?
Right.
And so, and so I landed a job on the commercial banking training program in Atlanta, Georgia, with SunTrust Bank, and that was really my first experience with stepping out on faith. And so I took this job, learning all about nonprofits and how nonprofits work. Learning a whole lot about money and stewardship, and so if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're on Peachtree Street, almost every church I financed when I was at SunTrust. And so if you fast forward just a bit, I moved back to Shreveport in 2013 and joined the board of directors of Providence House. I took a job with JP Morgan Chase where I was senior vice president of public, institutional, and nonprofit banking. So really fancy title to say I served nonprofits. And my introduction to First Methodist Church was really as the church's banker. And so I was banker and I learned all about nonprofits here in Shreveport and was invited to join the board of Providence House in 2014. And very shortly thereafter, the executive director announced her retirement. And so I was on the selection committee and I was a new girl. I'd just come back to town, new to town, but I grew up here in Shreveport.
Yeah.
And one of the consultants said, really the best candidate for this job is sitting at the head of your table. And of course, I never looked up because I thought surely she wasn't talking to me. I worked for a big bank and I had a big title and there was some prestige to the work that I did. And I remember going home saying to my husband, funny thing happened in the office today. And he said, I told him about the experience and he said, hey, God didn't take you to Atlanta as a science major to become a banker, to learn about nonprofits, to bring you back home, to allow you to sit in places you didn't deserve to sit because you were so good. God needed to know that he could trust you with the assignments. And even if the assignments didn't look like what you had charted, he wanted to know if he could trust you to serve him and no matter where he placed you. And of course, that wasn't the answer I wanted. So I called my sister and I said, so let me tell you, funny thing happened. And she said, this is exactly what God has created you to do. And I remember praying, Corey, and I remember saying, God, the gravity of this work is so great that there was a sense of fear and there was a sense of uncertainty because I was a banker.
Yeah.
But I remember saying, if this is what you want from me, I need you to open this door so wide that I could just walk through it without any barriers, without any inhibitions. And I said, but if it's not the work that you call me to do, I need you to close it so that I don't err. I need to just stay on this journey towards purpose. And after a very grueling interview process and nationwide search, I landed this job at Providence House. And it wasn't, so my last day at JP Morgan Chase was December 15th of 2015. And my first day at Providence House was Monday, the 17th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I gave myself, and we didn't have a lot of time because we had an executive director that had been there for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And so she was the roadmap and she had all of the information and I needed to get there so I could sit at her feet and kind of learn this new role. And it's just very, if I look back at it, I'm almost 8 years into this journey. And I really didn't, I needed a roadmap, but I really have just trusted God on this journey. And it's just been an amazing journey. And so that is really how I started and how I landed at the doorstep of Providence House. And I haven't looked back.
That is incredible.
Haven't looked back.
That is an incredible story of how God brought you through so many different situations, and a testimony of how, I guess, your faithfulness, well, not I guess, it is a testament to your faithfulness as God's direction in your life and trusting where he leads and being willing to go.
I think, I know, that is really all God wants from us. We're so busy trying to figure out next steps, and you accomplish this milestone that you created for yourself, not even understanding that God had something even bigger for you. It was just packaged differently. And I think we spend so much time trying to figure out the end of the story and getting to this place, and we forget to enjoy the journey, because it's when you look back over your life and when you really realize what God has allowed you to experience, both good and bad, that you really begin to discover purpose. And then you understand, hey, don't take yourself so seriously. Every time I'm called and, hey, Verni, we want to give you this award or that award. The best reward is when my children understand that they are their brother's keeper, when my children understand the importance of giving back. When I go to church and I can share my insecurities with my church members, those are the things that's the reward for me. Yeah. It's not my name in lights. It's not you're the best nonprofit executive director. None of it's not any of those things. It is really just walking in purpose and not worrying about tomorrow, because the word says tomorrow will take care of itself. And so I think when we really understand God's word and God's purpose for our lives, I think it eliminates a lot of the stress that we take on, because so often we're going after a different goal and not seeking after God's purpose. And so today I just live for God's purpose. So even if it looks differently than I think it should, I'm just going to follow him, because my way didn't really get me to the right places. So I just tend to follow him.
I love that story. And I feel like my wife is over my shoulder just saying, see, because there are so many times in my life, I came to Christ at a later age in life. And before I came to Christ, it was all about, what can I do to further where I'm at? What do I need to do to make things happen? And my wife grew up and as a pastor's kid, and she is very much spirit led, and it was extremely foreign and extremely difficult for me, like whenever we were together, because it was someone who is very sure of themselves and very confident in their ability to do, instead of trusting. And so my wife, and you've definitely reinforced this, that trusting the Lord in the process that he has for you is going to give you so much more than you could ever have hoped for by doing it on your own to try to make things happen for yourself. Because time and time again, just like you pointed out, like through faith and trusting Christ with his plan for your life, he brought so many things about in our lives, and it just continues to be laid out. The path continues to be laid out as we take steps in faith. Whereas all through those times, I was the one who was like, okay, we need to go do this. We need to go try and do these things. We need to see what's happening over here. And she would continually just be saying, like, we just need to pray. We just need to have faith. And every time it worked out exactly as you say.
I always say, I bet God gets such a kick out of watching us, the creation, as we think we are navigating or in control of a single thing, and we're navigating this thing we call life. And I love that God is so patient and so gracious and so kind, because the creator definitely knows his intent for the creation. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy to get caught up in what we think because our roadmap is man. I mean,
Yeah.
in order to be successful, you have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or in order to
Mm-hmm.
have a happy life, you have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. When really the word of God says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him. And he said he'll direct thy path. And it's so much easier when we have something tangible to hold on to or to look or to touch and feel to sense a sense of security. But faith is what you cannot, it's trusting in what you cannot see,
Mm-hmm.
trusting in what you cannot understand. For the life of me, I will never be able to comprehend. I know that you and I are sitting here having this conversation. I know my life journey. I know the things that I've been able to accomplish through his grace, but I cannot for the life of me connect the dots between earning a degree in microbiology and chemistry, working as a banker, coming back as a nonprofit executive director, and using all of those skills to serve homeless people. Like that is incongruent in every sense of the word, but yet it's the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's I could not make it up. It is my journey. And so um what I hope we begin to do as God's servants
Mm-hmm.
is to enjoy the journey even when we don't understand it. If I am at the point in my life, if God says, I need you to go and set up a tent on Milam Street, and I need you to put a blue chair underneath that tent and just witness, even though that sounds so foreign to me. But God, if you direct me to do it, I know there's a bigger purpose and a bigger plan, and it's bigger than me. That's where we have to be in our walk. And I think that's when we begin to feel the peace of God, the security of God. When the pages when the words from the Bible begin to leap off the pages and live in our heart, is when we can trust him, even if parts of that journey are really hard and cause heartache. God is still there in all of that. So
Yeah.
he is just such an amazing God. And because he's been with me and walked alongside me, I have no choice but to trust him because I don't know anything else. Nothing else has worked.
Yeah.
Failed relationships and lost friendships and all of those. Some things don't last, but his word and his presence are always there. And so that's what I hang my hat on. That's what I hang my hat on.
Well, that's great. So if we see you in a tent with a blue chair on Milam Street,
God instructed me there, and I will be very happy to be there. Won't understand it. I will have a befuddled look. But if God places me there, it's for his glory, for his good. And
I love it.
Yeah.
It's that Old Testament faithfulness for sure.
Absolutely. I'm an Old Testament girl too. I love it. Love it.
So could you tell us about Providence House?
Sure. Providence House is an emergency shelter for families with children.
Okay.
And families defined as single men with children, single women with children, and married couples with children. And so what distinguishes our work and our mission from some other shelters that do great work is our goal is to rehab the entire family unit. There were two ladies, Marianne Selber and Jean Sayers from First Presbyterian Church, and they saw the need back in the 80s when there was so much poverty, but they saw families being separated. And so once upon a time, if a mother had a son and the boy was 13 and she went to the Y, the boy was too old to be on the women's side and too young to be on the men's side. So there was this separation. And so they knew that they had to find something, create something where a family unit could be whole again. And so that was the genesis of Providence House. And today, when I say single men with children, right now we have about 23 families in the house today. Of those 23 families, 5 are headed by single dads who are raising girls and boys. And so the work that we get to do at Providence House is so much bigger than let's provide shelter.
Yeah.
Shelter is just the beginning of the journey. Having a safe place to lay your head, having a place where your children are fed, where you're getting clothing. I call that just a basic humanitarian right.
Mm.
The journey, though, that word is very intentional. The journey of Providence House really, when you cross that threshold, it starts with love.
Mhm.
I say it's the no judgment zone. For whatever reason you're here,
Yeah.
and we want to start right there. So no one brushstroke could cover the plethora of reasons why people end up at Providence House. Well, what I love about what we do is the holistic approach. We start with asking the hows and the whys and the what do you need? When's the last time you ate? Where'd you sleep?
Mm.
Um, are your children hungry? Are your children enrolled in school? We get that basic information, and then we allow a family an opportunity to just breathe. You're in a foreign place with
Mm.
20 other families.
Mhm.
Um, it's safer than your car, but it's unfamiliar at the same time. And so we give families a few days to just kind of get acquainted with the house. We don't call it a shelter, with the house.
Mhm.
And then every family is assigned a case manager, and from that we figure out what your needs are and how can we meet those needs. And so on our campus, we have a 4-star child development center. If we don't educate children very early, we will lose them. And so if they don't begin to understand the value of education, reading, words, language, sounds, speech, colors, all of those things that are fundamental to developing that brain, then those children will be our next generation of homelessness. And
Mm.
so we get kids in school. We we have an adult high set program right there on our campus. Um, in fact, one of your church members, Jennifer McDonald, is our director of education at Providence House, a retired school teacher after 25 years, and gives leadership to education and workforce development. We're helping people to get jobs and to figure out their skill sets, to figure out what they have and how can we enhance what they have, and not what they don't have, but what they come
Mhm.
equipped with, and
Yeah.
how do we enhance that. And we're trying to figure out the right next steps for them. We have a healthcare component. We have, because of the generosity of First Methodist Church, we have a calming studio. So for children who've been traumatized by homelessness, a place to go and kind of allow their brains to level set. And if
Mhm.
little Johnny just slept on somebody else's couch in somebody else's car, and then we send them to school and say, hey, behave and be a good boy, he's not equipped. His brain is not equipped to deal with that trauma. So
Mhm.
having a state of the art calming studio, um, because they told me we couldn't do it, it's so critical for our children. And so Providence House really is that one place that holistically a family
Mm.
unit can find new beginnings, not a handout, a
Mm.
hand up,
Yeah.
to become better equipped to be a whole family. Um, I say that every person there, including my staff, every person wants to be seen, heard, and valued. And that's what we get to do while loving on them, at the same time. So it's an incredible place to work. It's an incredibly difficult place to work because some families want it and some families don't. And you are
Mm.
pushing moms and dads, fight for your children, do this for your
Mm.
children, so that your children won't live a lifetime of homelessness. And
Yeah.
sometimes it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. And those are the hard moments when you have
Mhm.
to uninvite someone to be a part of your family.
Yeah.
But everybody has to put in the sweat equity. The word says, if you don't work, you don't eat. And
Mhm.
so we teach that concept that um, everybody's a part of the new beginning. And so there is no one day that's the same, Corey. It
I
is,
can't imagine.
we don't know what's going to show up on our doorstep, but our prayer is every day we're ready to address it in love, receive it, help as best we can, and partner with people like this body of believers who will get in there and say, hey, we don't know the answers either, but let's call this. And, the
Mhm.
community coming together to really rally around poverty and homelessness. I tell people every day, we are the beneficiary of everything that's good in our community. We see good. We see people giving. We see people sharing. We see everything that's good. And so I don't focus on the bad. We focus on the good that happens.
Yeah.
Right there at 814 Cotton Street. Yeah.
Just down the street from us.
Just around the corner. Yeah.
And so can you, I guess, elaborate a little bit more on like the importance of keeping like the family unit together?
Yes.
When that, and like just what y'all feel is the driving force between or behind keeping the family unit together?
Sure. I think it goes without saying, if the devil can infiltrate and divide the family, he's really won. Families need to be covered. Ideally you would want dad to be present and serve as the covering for mom and children. But even if mom is there and without a father, those children need to be protected. So keeping a unit, keeping that consistency of family together is so critical in every walk of life, not just in homelessness, in a church body, keeping the unit together, being connected with the other part of you, that part that understands you, who believes in you, who loves you unconditionally, whether you're having a bad hair day or not, that place and space you can find love. That's what happens in a family unit. And so it's already traumatic if kids experience a broken home. But for a kid to be separated from a mom or separated from a dad is even more traumatic. And it sets this precedence, and especially for a child, that's normalcy. And that's not what normalcy looks like. And so having a place, a very unique place like Providence House, where we help the child, but we also help the adult, because parents parent the way they know how to.
Yeah.
They parent the way that they were parented. And so if your mom yelled at you, then you yell at your kid, not because you think it's wrong, you think it's right, because that's the way you were taught. And so the benefit of keeping that unit together is so we can modify some behaviors of parents. And so we have parenting classes, and we taught moms that if you lower your voice, your kids have to lean in to listen. But if you yell at them, it instills this sense of fear. And so just by doing something as simple as, if you're trying to get your kids' attention, speak softly. And moms are like, never thought about that. So just modifying behaviors that don't make people bad people or bad parents, but to correct some things that they've learned along the way, so that children are repeating a healthy cycle. And if we do that, Corey, we are creating a better community. Then when kids go to school, they're not so prone to yell and at their friends when friends make a mistake or whatever. So we're teaching them to do things in love. So if a mom or a dad haven't been taught that, then how do they teach their kids that? So keeping that unit together, to keep the sanctity, the beauty of family, is so critical in the whole rehab. And you'll see a lot of homeless people right behind this very church who are living in those parts, who have family, but they've been disconnected from what is familiar and what love might feel like. And so when you begin to disconnect people and disassociate them from what's normal, I think that's when the devil begins to have his heyday.
Yeah.
And people fill those voids with other things: drugs, alcohol, abuse, domestic violence, all of those things, because they're separated from the one thing that keeps us rooted and grounded, and that's family. So keeping that unit together becomes so critical. That much more critical to keep them together than to separate a unit.
It makes so much sense, because I mean, you see like so many stats that say the main predictor of success in life is a mom and a dad who are present in the household. And so the fact that y'all are instilling that is like, whatever family is there, like rallying the family around each other and
so support. That support and that love. And so sometimes we have to be an extension of family. There are kids that have not experienced love from their moms or dads. And so as staff, we get to be an extension of God's love. So we do God's work every single day, and bringing units together, and just undergirding those family units every single day.
Mm. I can't imagine how amazing it is to see it whenever all that comes together.
It is why we get up and do it every single day.
Mm.
Our mission is breaking the homeless cycle one family at a time. We may not save all 80 families that we serve every year, but if we can change the trajectory for, one, two, three families, then that
Mm.
changes our community long term permanently. That means that's one kid that's not involved in violence going to school, and maybe your next teacher, or maybe your next mayor, or maybe your next judge, or maybe your next whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they can even dream and have vision. But for kids who don't have even a vision, something to lean towards or strive for,
Mm-hmm.
imagine where that kid will land. And so
Yeah.
we are building, I kind of consider our work building the future.
Mm-hmm.
We can save kids, and we want to save mom and dad along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes
Yeah.
sense, because if you don't have anything to plan for, if you don't have any hope out
Yeah.
for your future, then it's almost like, why would you try for anything in the first place?
And that's why we see a lot of violence in our
Mm-hmm.
community. That's why we see these aren't people that are bad people.
Yeah.
These are a lot of people that don't feel like they matter.
Mm.
They don't feel like they are seen, valued, or heard. They don't feel like they can contribute. There is nothing that keeps them rooted or connected to something that's bigger than them, that would say, what you have purpose.
Yeah.
You were created on purpose, and you have something to bring. So when people don't feel that way, then people don't behave that way.
Yeah.
And
That makes sense.
Yeah. I've learned a lot along the way.
I'm sure.
I've learned a lot along the way.
From biology to nonprofit. I'm sure there's quite
Biology,
a gamut of
banking,
information.
and then the nonprofit. Absolutely.
Oh, goodness. And one other question I had about Providence House was, you said you have 20 families?
So we have the capacity for 27 families, up to 80 people.
Oh, wow.
At one time. So we don't just serve the 27 families in the building.
Mm-hmm.
When a family has what we call, reached a point of graduation where they have landed a job and earn income, and we have a budget and they can sustain themselves, we move them into an apartment or housing, but they're still part of the Providence House program. So we're still doing counseling, we're still doing support. So we're not just serving in the house. We probably have 70 families in the community that we continue to serve. So last year alone, for example, we served 412 people, 226 children. So of that 412, 226 were children. So 70+% of our population on any given day are children 0 to 18 years old. So our service extends beyond the house. We have people in every apartment complex. We have people who are living independently in houses, and they're working and they're getting on their feet. They're not fully self-sufficient. And so our work, we don't just send you off and say, there you go, Corey, you got it. We stay, we call it stick and stay. We stick and stay until you are fully self-sufficient. So our work is never done, and our connectivity, going back to family unit, we never disconnect from the people that we serve. And so if you become self-sufficient and you are living, on your own and taking care of your family, and there's a hiccup, your roots are still at Providence House. You can always come back, and we'll give you that little extra nudge, that extra support. So when you talk about the importance of family, we don't use that word loosely. They are forever a part of our family, and family's always there for you. So that's what I love about the work we do. We never disassociate. We are always there for our families.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so when the families are there together, do they interact with each other, and is it a community within the house where people are, people who go through the same situation at the same time tend to, help lift each other up? Is that what happens at the Providence House, or are people encouraged to not?
No, there's a lot of association at Providence House. So for example, we encourage families to eat together. So let's just say my family's there. I can't send my kids down for dinner. My husband and I would go with our kids and we eat at the table together. And so
Mm.
we're eating next to another family. So just as you would in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And so we foster conversations. And so sometimes a mom with a little baby may see another mom with a 2-year-old, and the mom with the older kid will come over and say, hey, your baby's crying. Let me hold the baby for a minute so you can get a bite
Mm.
in. So
Yeah.
it's that type of support that we have there. Not
Mm.
It's not always utopia though,
Mm-hmm.
because some people come with very skewed perceptions of, how to behave in a communal environment, and and we have to reteach some things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, there is definitely a sense of family. As you can imagine, we have right now about 5 single dads, and so the dads kind of rally around each other. And
Mm.
it was so funny. Everybody's getting ready for first day of school. And I saw, one dad asked the other dad, here's my daughter's uniform. Does this bow match? And the other dad was like, I don't know. My girl doesn't even have a bow. Do I need to get a bow for her hair? And so it's that kind of it's their normal interaction. But for us, it is such a big deal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
here's a man who can trust another man, just for advice. And it
Yeah.
seems so small, but it's so big. And so it really, families connecting and understanding that somebody else understands exactly what I'm going through. They may
Mm-hmm.
have come for different reasons, domestic violence for one and a lifetime of poverty for another. But we are all in this place. What can we learn and what can we unlearn? Because
Mm-hmm.
there are some behaviors we want families to unlearn once they get there. So it is a community within a community. There's a lot of, there are some moms who work at night. And so when they are at work, you cannot leave your kids. So there's another family who would babysit for a mom. So there are babysitting forms. And so you might see a
Wow.
mom with 2 sets of kids and, at dinner time. So there is a community within the community. And
Mm.
I think the part I love the most is when there are families who are right there, right there. There's light at the end of the tunnel and they want to give up. And you have a graduate family who'll come in and say, keep going, keep going. It's worth it. Keep going. Don't give up. Don't quit the program. Don't walk out. Don't get frustrated. It is frustrating, but keep going. I mean, we have things like curfew. We have a 10 o'clock curfew.
Mm-hmm.
And, for some families, that's very difficult. What if I want to stay out with my friends until 11? And we're like, that's fine, but you just can't do that here. That's fine. You just can't do that here. There
Yeah.
are rules. And so we are trying to create a safe environment, but we're trying to create some standards so that when they are living independently, we're teaching our kids, no, we don't stay out till 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. There are
Yeah.
some rules to follow. And so, yeah, there are families, there's a family within the Providence House family, and they are learning and growing from each other. And again, learning some things to do and learning some things not to do. So,
Mm-hmm. I
yeah.
love that families come back and they're able to
Oh,
encourage the people that
absolutely.
are there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I'm sure it's in
Absolutely.
those times where it's like you're right on the cusp and you don't know you're about to reach that
Yeah.
breakthrough.
Yeah.
And then that's usually whenever it's the hardest and you feel like it's
Absolutely.
never going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My husband and I talk about that all the time. When you've been asking God for something, and sometimes you have to go back and say, God, hey, remember when? And I know, again, God gets a chuckle out of that. Like, yeah, that's really not what you need, but I hear you. And so right there, whenever that thing that you've been trusting God for, right when you're almost there, you're right, is when it gets the hardest.
Mm.
And when you just want to quit, and when you want to say, I'm saying for anyone, not just in a homeless situation, but man, when you have another sister or brother in Christ who comes and says, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will tell you, my first 2 years as executive director, there were so many times I wanted to quit. I was like, God, this is too big. Like, this is too big. Like, who does this? Like, who does this? I didn't have enough money. I didn't know the community. I just moved back. I didn't think that my name was significant enough to make impact. I was the daughter of a preacher and a social worker. We didn't come from wealth. And in fact, I think I may have grown up poor, We had
Mhm.
everything we needed and most of the things we wanted. Um, but we had a lot of love. And so there were so many times along the journey when I just could not see how we were going to make it.
Yeah.
When donors really had, they knew my predecessor, but they didn't
Mhm.
know me. And that's tough when 25 years of history walks out the door, and here you are, the new girl, and they're like, and who are you? And all I could say was, I'm a servant.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't consider myself any brighter than anybody else. 1 + 1 = 2, no matter how you do it. But I read and I understand this work. I understand God's plan for this place. But when you sit down in that chair and you wear that, it is a hard place. And there were many times when I said, God, I think I got this wrong, like real wrong. And God would remind me, you know, you can do all things through me. If you just trust me,
Mhm.
you need to stop relying on your intellect. You need to stop relying on what you think you know. And you need to just let go and take a breath and hear my voice and trust me.
Mhm.
And after I got fresh 2 years, my husband would tell you, I got up off my knees and I dusted myself off and I said, okay, enough of me trying to do it. God, just show me. And God began to bring people into the ministry of Providence House, people who didn't know me but had heard me speak at some event. And they would say, hey, I want to learn more. People started to invite me into their living room because they understood that I didn't take a job, that I'm walking in purpose. They understood that um, this kid really loves the Lord and really has a
Mm.
desire to serve Him. It wasn't about my name. It was really about walking in His name to serve the least of these. It was really about shedding of my title as senior vice president and all those other things, and letting those things go and saying, God, I'm but your servant. How do you want to use me? I kind of felt like Jonah when he was told to go to Nineveh, and
Mhm.
Jonah was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. And Jonah is going to Tarsus doing what he wasn't supposed to be doing. And you
Mhm.
get there in ministry because you cannot see the bigger picture. You do not always understand how God's hand is at work in your life. And so
Mm.
I know when people say to me, well, how do you relate to homelessness? These are people who wanted to give up. There's so many times I wanted to give up.
Mhm.
I know what that feels like. And so you don't have to be homeless to relate to the tragedy and the trauma of what people are going through.
Mhm.
And so because I shed myself of title and all those other things, and I get in the trenches and I work, not to say, look what you've done, but to say, God, look what you've done for me. Like, God, you would use me to minister to her, to get her. Yeah, that's a place of privilege. And so, yeah, I know what it feels like to want to stop, but God says,
Mhm.
keep going.
That's
Just keep
awesome.
going. So every time I'll share this with you, I haven't shared it with a lot of people.
Okay.
My first year when I was there, I had headhunters from every bank calling me. Hey, we'll offer you, you know, double your salary and we'll offer you, these big sign-on bonuses. And there were so many moments when I thought, when I add that all up, that's a lot of money.
Mm.
And my husband would say to me, but you would look at the money and the God who breathed into you the breath of life. Is that which is more valuable? And so sometimes you're given these opportunities that really aren't opportunities. That would have been a stumbling block. Had I just once called on a bank when it got really hard, when I didn't have any money to serve people, to say, this is just too hard, let me go with this bank and let me just make money.
Yeah.
I just think about how it would have grieved God and how I would have missed so many of the blessings that I've been privy to. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a good place. Not an
Good.
easy place, but it's a good place.
Absolutely. Goodness, Verni, I cannot imagine, I guess, what it would have been like to look back, have taken one of those jobs and look back on the Providence House.
Mm.
I'm sure that would have been an amazing missed opportunity. And the families that you've impacted, the people who you would never have known and the things you would have never gotten to.
Yeah.
put forward in the Providence House?
It goes back to the beginning of our conversation. We are so busy looking with our natural eyes
Mm-hmm.
and listening to what man has told us is success, when really God just wants us to trust him
Mm-hmm.
so that we walk in purpose. And when we walk in purpose, that is success.
Yeah.
I shudder to think what would have happened, but I'm so glad that that I lean to the still small voice of Jesus, and I let him lead, and not my will,
Mm-hmm.
but his will.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've been blessed more than I could have ever blessed anybody else. The blessings, when a little kid walks up to you and says, hey, you made my day. You make me so happy when I see you. I'm like, oh my God. Worry about what? Global warming? Worry about what? 100 degrees? None of that matters.
Yeah.
When a child, when you make a difference. So this little kid has no idea that their words change your life. So I'm supposed to be changing their lives, and they are changing my life. And so, yeah, I would have missed that.
Oh man,
I would have missed that. I'm so glad I didn't.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you're here too.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Even though it's a daunting task. It is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
But the joy in the work is knowing that you have so many partners, so many people who will join with you,
Mm-hmm.
who don't even know you, but who will join with you to behind a cause that is bigger than all of us, and who will join with you and say, hey, I may not be able to be a case manager, but I can buy you paper towels because I know your people need it.
Yeah.
That's as valuable as volunteering. I mean, so when people will join the journey with you and say, come on, we have to keep going together because we have to do it for our brother or our sister, people we don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's why you do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do it every day.
And so to get all of these amazing things in place that you have for these families, like establishing and encouraging the family unit, eating together for meals, and putting in place a curfew, and all these things that are just, the foundation for a successful life.
Sure.
Like all those things that bring together the family unit, that, also through the curfew, I'm sure they learned that, nothing good happens after 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And then eating together as a family is that bonding experience. So was all this in place before you came to the Providence House? Like, how did y'all find that these are the things that are going to create like a successful family unit after they leave?
Sure. Many of those things were in place. We simply duplicated what family looks like, and we duplicated that in the house. What we've done in the past 8 years since I've been there is we've looked at our families and the needs. So, for example, eating at the table with mom and dad and kiddos is what's normal for you and I.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no mom or dad, how do we still create that sense of normalcy? So we had to look at trends and things that were happening in the house over time to still bring to that kid, this is normal. And so normalcy is somebody engaging you and caring about your day and eating with you and asking you those questions. So in the absence of mom, could a staff member fill that void?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the types of things. Instead of just saying, hey, go down and eat with your family, sometimes learning that we had to be family. We had to implement some things like that. We had to, I think one of the most critical things is how do we deal with trauma? Because those were things that we weren't talking about back in the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s. We were just thinking, oh, just get yourself together and you're going to be okay. So nobody talked about mental illness and no one talked about trauma. So as a leader, I had to figure out, how do we position ourselves to deal with this? Because we cannot make a a family unit whole if we don't deal with, the core causes of, homelessness.
Yeah.
And so, bringing some of those mental health services in, and being able for allowing families to go to counseling, but right there on campus. We used to send them to counseling. Hey, let
Mm.
me give you a phone number and go to this counselor.
Yeah.
And we figured out as soon as they walked out the door, they weren't going to counseling. They were going to do those things that would impede them from being whole, whether it was drugs, alcohol, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learned that no, we need to bring services to them because they're not whole yet. There were some things we did, Corey. Take your kid to the doctor, for example, and let's make sure we get them vaccinated. And
Mm-hmm.
here's where the hospital is. And then we never stopped to think this mom has to navigate a bus with 5 kids with a stroller and,
Ooh.
young kids. There were things that we had to rethink through. And so what worked in 1988 and 1990, even in 2000, they work fundamentally. But in order to prepare us for where we are today and to handle what we know is coming in our future, we had to retool the way we thought. We
Mm.
had to retool the way we helped. It used to be if we build it, they will come. That's not how it works. People
Mm.
have to trust you. So I'll give you another great example. Even if you're doing, let's just say, a backpack giveaway, which we had a back to school bash on August 4th, we realized it was important for kids to have school supplies, but it was important for kids we needed to make sure that they were healthy, that everybody had their vaccinations, that moms had, signed up for Medicaid to have insurance.
Yeah.
We thought about all of those things. So while other people were just doing a backpack drive, we brought all of those services in for
Mm.
one event. And really our messaging was this: families, we see you. Moms, we understand. Dads, we understand. Kids, we know that you need to run on that water slide just to burn out that energy and be happy. And so how we deliver services, we had to rethink that, and our families taught us that. We would have
Mm.
moms who would leave the program and they would say, man, I really wish we would have had an opportunity just for mothers to get together one night and a mom's night out without the kids and somebody to babysit. Well, we never thought about that. We do now.
Yeah.
We never thought about the fact that sometimes moms are not equipped or dads are not equipped to even handle their kids. And so sometimes we have to have a separation and help mom and dad to get whole and then reunite those kids. We didn't think about things like that. So our families have taught us what we need. The greatest lesson we are being taught right now is with the eradication of the eviction moratorium. We're seeing more and more people facing eviction, and landlords are not
Mm.
waiting 30 days. They're putting those eviction notices up at 5 days. And
Mm.
so over the last few weeks, we've taken in families with teenage boys
Mm.
who are 6 feet tall and eat all day. And they are living in a 420 square foot space with their mom, their brother. So you got 2 teenage boys and 2 little kids and a mom. And we had facilities for little kids to play, but nothing for teenage boys. And then there was no space for teenage boys to say, I'm frustrated, or I don't understand puberty. I don't understand what's happening with my body. Why do I have just things that we didn't think about.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're looking to grow in this journey, we want to make sure that no matter what age you are, no matter what the need, we have those resources. So how we manage our house has really been retooled by the families that we've served.
Yeah.
And so every day we're tweaking, we're trying to get better. We're trying to make sure that we meet you at your point of need.
Mm-hmm.
And again, all without judgment.
Yeah.
All without judgment.
So for those, I guess I'm curious, for the teenage boys, like what have y'all found that's a good outlet?
Basketball.
Okay.
So we are kind of landlocked. Across the street is our child development center. So of course they're not playing there.
Yeah.
We have a park next door, but there's no basketball goal. But let me tell you what we didn't think about. We have a 10,000 square foot warehouse, and it's fenced in,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a safe place to for kids to play. So we put the basketball goal in that kind of fenced in area. So they kind of think of it as their clubhouse. And so we don't allow the smaller kids to go out and play basketball with the big. They needed to have their own space. They needed to have some place not to just burn energy, but to talk.
Yeah.
Because teenage boys talk to teenage boys. They needed some place to just be and sometimes share their inadequacies, sometimes even share their fears. They're not going to always share that with their mom, and they're not going to always share that with a case manager. So we had to not just say, oh my God, we don't have a place. We had to be creative and think of a place. We converted an office in the house, and we now call it the teen scene room. So even when we would have people come over for tutoring, we would have all the tutors in one space. And so you may have one tutor working with first graders and then another tutor, working with older boys or older kids. Well, the older kids wouldn't come for tutoring because they felt, I'm down here with all the little kids and, I don't want to learn ABCs and 1, 2, 3. And so we thought, okay, we have an office space that doubled as a counseling office. And we went in, we put sofas, we have video games, we have just stuff they like to do. And so when they go in for tutoring, the tutor will go into the teen scene room. And so it makes them have, almost, again, their own space and their sense of purpose. And really, we've said to them, we see you. We know, we hear, we understand. And so even though we didn't go in with, woe is me, what we don't have, we use the things that we do have to meet the needs of our kids and of our families. And that's what we do every day. We don't cry and whine and complain. We figure it out together. We ask. We don't just build in and say they will come. We say, what do you need? What is it that you would want? What would make this space more tolerable for you? What would, And so they begin to talk to us. And so when we implemented what they said, then they begin to understand we are listening and we care and we want to make sure that they are happy and whole, just like their little sister or brother and just like their mom and dad. Yeah.
So can you walk us through what the process would be for a family that comes to Providence House for the first time?
Sure. Families come to us a lot of different ways.
Okay.
They don't just walk up on our doorstep. That happens from time to time. That's not how we take a family in. More often than not, we would have a Shreveport police officer, or sometimes a judge will call and say, we have this family experiencing fill in the blank, and Verni, do you have capacity? That's one way. The most common way is through our continuum of care, which is Hope Connections. And families would go to Hope Connections. They would have an assessment done. And that assessment really, it's a series of questions to determine how vulnerable. And I know that sounds really odd. If you're homeless and I'm homeless, we're both vulnerable, right? But to keep things fair and equitable, if I only have one room, how do I decide which family gets that one room? And so based on this questionnaire, there is a score. It's called a VI-SPDAT. It's a vulnerability index score. And it says that, hey, Verni has 5 kids, a baby, and a sick 2-year-old. Corey is homeless, but Corey's working part-time and has 1 kid. Who's most vulnerable? And so I don't even ever have to look at a name. I look at that vulnerability index score and I'll say, okay, we have capacity for the next family. And so once a family gets there, again, we want to make sure that they understand expectations. Here's what I love. It's not fancy, but you walk in, it's clean. You don't have to bring your own toothbrush. You don't have to bring a towel. You don't have to bring diapers for your kids. You don't have to bring pillows. You don't have to bring anything. You just have to come. And so when a family is assigned to a room and assigned a case manager, all those things are there. We know that everybody's going to have to take a shower. Oftentimes when they come, they don't have clothing, or they have clothing that's been infested with, bed bugs or whatever. We don't say, oh, you can't bring those clothes. But what we say is we have an option for you. And so we have a donation center. Would you like to have something new? Would you like to have a fresh set of clothes? There's how we say things to people, is indicative of how we see them and how we care about them. And so once a family gets there, we are providing for all of their needs. If a baby needs formula, if a mom needs medicine, those are the things that we're asking. We have families who come to us and they've been off their meds, high blood pressure, diabetes medication. They've been off their meds for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And they're navigating in 100-degree temperature, and we expect for them to be healthy and whole. So our job is to figure out what those needs are very early on.
Mm-hmm.
And then we begin the journey. We begin the conversations, and they're conversations very much like the one we're having now. Just talk to me. We are trying to build trust. People will not begin to tell you their story or their true story until they trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we feed them, we love on them, we listen to them, and then we surround them. I know every single family in the house. I know my job as executive director is to give oversight and governance and raise money. I know every single family because I'm telling their story. And that is, I think, the one thing that keeps me grounded. I know every baby. I know every teacher. I know why every family is there. God uses me to be their voice because they may never have an opportunity to step into the mayor's office or a city council meeting. But God is entrusting me to use my voice for the least of these. And so when these families come, again, no judgment. Whether they have come because Shreveport Police Department found them in a Walmart parking lot and they've been sleeping in the parking lot, and then the police officers notice them there night after night. Whether they've come because we've gotten a call from Willis Knighton or Oshner about a mom who showed up in the emergency room and has no place to go with a sick baby, or whether they've come through Hope Connections because they've done an assessment. People come to us a lot of ways, but when they get there, they are secure. They are in a secured space. They are in a space that they can call their own. They will be fed. They will have those basic things that we all need that distinguish us from animals. They will know that they are valued, heard, seen, regarded, cared for, loved. Those are the things that get people moving to the next level. We treat them with respect.
Yeah.
Whether they've been walking up and down this street or not, we're going to love on them. And so when they come to us, they know. One mom said to me, it was the first time that I could breathe. She'd been holding her breath, not knowing how her kids were going to eat, not knowing, if she was going to be safe in the elements, not knowing that. So for a mom to say it was the first time that I was able to breathe, and that's why we get up and do it every day. That's why
sure that freedom just gives them, like you said, the ability to breathe in a moment is probably more valuable than we can ever imagine.
Absolutely.
It gives you the ability to take a second, center yourself, and then put together some sort of plan to put yourself in a better situation.
Move forward. And to the connection, the relationship between not just Providence House and First United Methodist, but Providence House and all of our supporters, whether it's paper towels or diapers or $1, we believe in accountability. And I think that's where I didn't know as a banker why that would be so important. We are accountable for every penny that comes in. There is no waste because we know what it's like to live hand to mouth, and we never want to be there. And so the partnerships and the relationships with so many, that is the difference between my ability to serve a family or not serve a family. So when a family pulls up, if they're dropped off in a police car, we need to serve them. And so many people, especially this church body, allows us to do that. And we're so grateful. We're so grateful.
Yeah, we're grateful to partner with you, especially through Michelle. And she does an amazing job.
She's my shero. I love her. Yes.
Shout out Michelle Osborne.
Yes. She makes a difference.
But I guess, could you tell us a little bit about how, especially through Michelle, and how First Methodist Church helps with the Providence House?
I will tell you, and I know people may say this, oh, we couldn't do it without you. I literally mean that. We could not do this without you. Whether the church has always been provided some financial support,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so amazing to us, and we're so grateful through missions grants. We talked about the calming studio. First United Methodist Church provided $25,000 for that calming studio. Without that seed, we would not have it. The church has invited me to come and teach Sunday school. So I've taught the Seekers Sunday School and co-ed. The reason I'm sharing that is we are not that place where we're always asking for, but we like to give back. Whatever we have, we extend it back. We say thank you. We always send a thank you note, but the best way to show a thank you is to be and to do. So we hosted the 5th and 6th graders every year during the summer, and they come and they see and they take a tour and they learn about homelessness, and then they work. That's what you all do. You all are planting seeds in little kids and showing them that, if you are better off, help somebody else along the way. That's how this church supports. Michelle can call me and say, Verni, we have a woman, she's at a hotel, but we need to get her to Providence House. Do you have a wait list? And vice versa. I can say, Michelle, I have a woman and my house is full. Can the church put them up in a hotel just for a couple of days until we have a vacancy? It's that type of relationship and partnership that is not just, it's not just one person giving and one person receiving, but it is joining, connecting hand in hand where if we're trying to create a meal, if you bring the green beans, I'll bring the mashed potatoes. And together we change the community. And what I love most about it is nobody's doing it for notoriety. Nobody's doing it as a badge of honor. Nobody's doing it for the free t-shirt. We're doing it because we are servants, and we are doing it because it is the will of God that we serve. And so we really could not do the work that we do without the support of this church body, without the encouragement of the members. There are people who are members of Sunday school classes who'll send me a text message. Shout out to Hoyt Bain, and he'll say, good golly, girl, you are just doing great things and you encourage my heart. Do you know that days when I get a text like that from a Hoyt Bain, it gives me that encouragement. So what you give to us is so much. The tangibles and the intangibles are invaluable. Just the encouragement, just you're doing a good job. That those words go so far. So this church, really, y'all have been the wind beneath our wings, and so glad to be doing it with you. Really, so glad to be doing it with this body.
Absolutely. We're glad to be doing it with you. And is there any plan for expansion for the Providence House?
I am so glad you mentioned that. And that wasn't even we didn't even talk about this.
No. Let's hear it.
Can you be nervous and excited and scared all at the same time?
First time hosting a podcast. Yes.
Okay, well, great. All right. Thank you for validating me. So I'm nervous and excited and scared at the same time, but we are so grateful for our historic building that has served as our house for 35 years. But we also know that we have outgrown that house has far surpassed its useful life as a long-term housing facility. I shared there are teenage boys that are coming, and those rooms are 420 square feet, and really they're just designed for you to sleep. But these kids are living in these spaces. And so we have known for a long time that the building was a bit inadequate for our future needs. And so we are in the process now of searching for an architect, because we are going to be constructing a brand new, again, we don't call it a shelter, but new housing for our most vulnerable population. And that's how I like to describe it.
Wow.
And so we will, God willing, deconstruct our existing 10,000 square foot warehouse And soon, as God makes all the provision, we will have a brand new facility to accommodate our homeless population. We are so excited about that. It is one of the largest undertakings in our history, but we do know that we have to have adequate facilities in order to really do the rehab, to really the support that we need for our most vulnerable population. And so we are in the very beginning stages. Uh, we know what we want and what we
Mm.
need. And so
Mm-hmm.
what it will ultimately look like and turn out to be, we don't know yet, but
Yeah.
we are in the very beginning stages of finding an architect to design something for us that will live for perpetuity, to be able to serve the least of these for a long time. And with our existing building, we will continue to use it for homeless services. There are so many needs. There are 16 to 19-year-old unaccompanied minors who are walking our streets without education. We wanna open those doors to say, come and learn.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that we have workforce development services for our underserved, that 16 to 19-year-old group. We want to make sure that our calming studio is open to anybody who might need it. And so the best way to do that is that house, that historic building will always have life in it, and it
Mm-hmm.
will always be connected to the work and the mission that we're doing. So, so yeah, sometime, really soon we'll come out with a public announcement, um, even more public than this podcast, with a public announcement. But that is next on the horizon. We can't continue to serve adequately without the space and the accommodations that we need.
Mm-hmm.
And the needs not getting smaller, the needs getting greater. And
Mm.
so we need to be able to meet people at their point of need, and to be able to do the two things that we do, education and workforce development, more effectively, so that families are healthy and whole long term.
That sounds great.
So,
Definitely a
yeah, so
fantastic
I'm
mission.
excited, scared, and nervous all at the same time. There you go.
Well,
There you
good.
go.
And the faithfulness that you have to do what you do and the passion that you do it with is
Ugh,
such a blessing.
God shows up every single time. And I think I'll end just with this when we talk about faith. If I had not known God to be big enough to take me from Shreveport to Atlanta, back
Mm.
to Shreveport, and to serve, I would have never had the faith to believe that we could build a new facility, that we could serve 500 plus people, that we could be impactful even in healthcare. All of the ways that God has used this one little place. I wouldn't have believed it. If you had told me your story like it was your story, I would have been like,
Mm.
oh, Corey, I don't know. But because I've seen God's providential
Yeah.
hand on my life, and because I know that every time I trust Him, He never fails me. This is not about me. I don't want to fail Him now because He's been so faithful to me. I will not fail Him. And so, even though I don't know how this is all going to come together, this new facility and new
Mm-hmm.
space, I trust Him that He already knows the plan that He has for not just for me, but for Providence House. And so, when I say I'm nervous and scared and excited at the same time, I'm excited to see how God's going to pull the rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah.
I'm excited that He would use me as His servant, and I'm nervous about um, just all the amazing opportunities that will come to us just because of faithfulness. And
Mm.
so, if I could not trust Him, even when I did not trace Him, we wouldn't be sitting in these two chairs having this conversation. But because I trust Him, I'm just excited about what He's going to do through a little vessel. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the anticipation.
Yeah. Well, we will be there with you, Verni.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Guys, we will see y'all next time.